At Center for Spiritual Living Beaumont, we believe in spiritual living. Above all else, it is a philosophy that teaches us how to think and not what to think. We invite everyone to practice this philosophy by living in principle. We believe that God is all there is, and each person's relationship to God is a personal one. Every person, place, and thing, and all the space in between is not only an expression of God, but God itself. All love, peace, and beauty that is God exists within each person right now. Together we are all connected as one. Our faith allows us to apply this philosophy to our lives in every moment of every day. As we live in love, we see love revealed and flowing through the world around us. We act as citizens of this spiritual community at all times. This is how we think. We believe in God, we believe in ourselves, and we believe in you because we believe in spiritual living. We are the Center for Spiritual Living Beaumont. God's omnipresence is so obvious in the world around, in, through, and as each and every single person, place, and thing in this universe. God's omniscience, God's all-knowingness is always ever present in every conversation, in every word, and every sound. God's omnipotence is so obvious in the fact that every heart beats and every sun shines and every star and planet stays where it needs to be in order to be what it is. I am knowing and trusting here and now that all three of these aspects that are God are present here and now in this room, in this Zoom room, in each and every person watching, hearing, being a part of it, being a part of this beautiful service. I am knowing and trusting that all things are in divine right order here and now, and that each and every person is here to receive and open to receive this message, which will be given by this wonderful, wonderful godling named Neil Hainer. I am knowing and trusting that this message will spread out from this place and out into the world to become just what somebody needs to hear in order for the world to become a better place, a place that works for everyone. I'm knowing and trusting that each and every word that comes out is blessed, and then each and every person here now and around this is blessed. I'm knowing and trusting that this is where we need to be, and how we need to be, and what we need to hear. I release my perfect action of my word into the perfect action and order of the law, knowing it to be true, whole, and complete. Knowing it to be already part of this universe, knowing it to already be spreading outward and making the world a better place. And in full gratitude, let us anchor these words by saying together, and so it is.
Well, man, I feel like we've already been at church this morning. You don't need me, do you? I know and recognize that this is a community of consciousness, and I'm just celebrating all the consciousness that is out there in this room and online. This is truly a loving and conscious community, so I just want to celebrate that. For those of you that may still not know me, my name is Neil Hainer. I am a practitioner and a ministerial student. There's officially more ministers out there than there is up here. Not sure if that should make me nervous or not. But I appreciate being able to be asked to speak this Sunday, and I recognize there's some new people out there, so if this is your first time here, welcome, and we're glad that you're here. This is our Memorial Day weekend, so as always, I like to start off with a little joke. So it was Memorial Day, and the minister noticed that there was a young boy named Alex staring up at the large plaque that hung in the foyer of the church. The plaque was covered with names, small American flags that were mounted on either side of it. And the 7-year-old had been staring at the plaque for some time, so the minister walked up, stood beside the boy, and said quietly, "Good morning, Alex." "Good morning," replied Alex, still focused on the plaque. "What is this?" he asked. "Well, it's a memorial to all the young men and women who died in the service." Soberly, they stood together, staring at the large plaque. And then little Alex's voice could barely be heard when he asked, "Which service, the 9 o'clock or the 11 o'clock?" I'm trusting that that will not happen with us this morning. So, Center for Spiritual Living Worldwide has had the theme of living everyday wonder, applying our spiritual principles and our teachings to our everyday life. This month, we've been talking about emotions, and the title this morning is Low Tide and High Tide. And we're going to be taking a look at sadness, specifically grief, and the gifts that grief presents for us. But this whole month, we've been looking at emotions as our spiritual guides. Because as we are mindful of our emotions, as we ask the question, what is it that you are here to show me? We open up to that intuitive wisdom. So the first part of the month, we talked about how emotions are a reflection of our consciousness, of what's going on in our minds. And emotions are here to help us grow and to deepen in our spiritual practice. They are energy in motion, emotion. That emotional energy that we carry is creative and shouldn't be ignored or bypassed. They are a gift. And when we're willing to stop and listen what they're trying to tell us, there is an opportunity to open and to grow and to deepen in our spiritual understanding. They're also that fire that we bring to our spiritual practice, to our prayer that really helps cement our spiritual practices. The second week this month, we looked at moving from fear to faith and how these two emotions are not really as different as we think they might be. They are the same energy, just pointed in different directions. In the third week, we talked about the emotion of joy and how we can shift to joy any moment in our life when we practice gratitude. And last week, with Reverend Divine, we looked at anger. Looking anger in the eye and using our spiritual practice to shift out of anger when we need to, but recognizing that anger is also about change. So today, on our fifth Sunday of the month, we look at our last emotion, which is grief. And there's been a lot of grief in the world this week and these years, from lives lost during a global pandemic to unnecessary wars going on in the world, and of course the unnecessary loss of innocent and unlived lives this week in Texas. But have you noticed this month how we really start talking about one thing and it ends up being about another? Emotions are about energy, right? So fear is really about faith. Joy is really about gratitude. Anger is really about how we deal with change. Anger can give us the energy to make a change that is needed in our life. I know that some of us have felt some anger at the events of this week and grief at what has been lost. And as I always tell my friends, that anger can be used as the energy that we use to make a needed change. And I know that every time that we have one of these unnecessary and sad losses of life due to hatred and violence, that we are one step closer to deciding as a country that that is no longer who we want to be. One step closer to deciding that this is no longer who we as a country are deciding to be. But that's one of the reasons why we call this place the Center for Spiritual Living. Because when we look at our lives and we look at the world through a spiritual lens, we judge not by appearances, as the Bible says. We see that there is something beside the physical, something behind what is going on in the world. Behind our emotions is energy. Alongside fear is faith. That's spiritual living. Alongside the joy, there is gratitude. Alongside the anger, there is change. That's where the root comes from, metaphysical. This is a metaphysical teaching. That word meta means beyond or behind. There is something behind the physical. There is something alongside the things that I see out there in the world. I trust and believe that beside and along every act of violence and hatred, that there is something greater, some greater order, some greater love that always wins in the end. Because darkness has no power of its own. And the minute we decide to no longer give it our energy and our attention, it will dissipate back into the nothingness from which it came. And grief is no different. You see, grief is really about love. The best definition of grief that I've ever heard is that grief is leftover love. When we love something and we lose it, we don't have any place to put that love that we have, and it becomes grief. You see, without love, grief is just indifference. We often think of grief when someone transitions out of this life. But at its heart, grief is really about loss. One of the biggest moments of grief in my life was when I had to give up jobs that I loved. I had to grieve and give up the idea of who I was in that job and the parts of that job that I really loved. You see, you can grieve anything. Yes, we grieve the people who have transitioned out of this life, but you might grieve the loss of a friendship or a relationship, the loss of a job, the loss of an activity that was important to you that you can no longer do. Have you noticed that sometimes we don't even recognize how much we love something until we are grieving it? We don't have to avoid grief. We don't have to feel shame about it any more than we should avoid love or feel shame about love. What we are called to do is to sit with it, to be still, like a huge wave that crashes over us, and sometimes it carries us away. But if we're willing to sit with it and honor the love that is really behind it, then we can allow it to pass. You see, our emotions are like the tides. We have high tides and we're happy and we're joyful, and we have low tides when we are feeling sad and we're grieving. But if we're just still and we honor the place and the space that we're in, we feel what it is that we're being called to feel, eventually the tide turns. We often use waves as a metaphor for emotion. I'm feeling waves of anger, waves of ecstasy, waves of jealousy. Waves are another form of energy. As we learn to follow the rise and fall of our emotions, just like we watch the rise and fall of our breath when we meditate, we allow emotions to make us more mindful, more careful, and more open. In his book, Loving Each Other, the author writes this, Leo Buscaglia. We have so little faith in the ebb and flow of life, of love, of relationships. We leap at the flow of the tide and resist in terror of the ebb. We are afraid it will never return. We insist on permanency, on duration, on continuity, when the only continuity possible in this life is love. But grief is not just about loss. It's also about grieving that which could have been. That which could have been. One of the ways that I often feel a pang of grief in my life is when I look out at fathers playing with their son. Not just because I did not get to have that experience when I was growing up, but I may not have that experience in this life. I'm not just grieving what happened to me as a kid, I'm grieving that loss of what could have been, the experience that I didn't have. We grieve lives that never got to be lived in our own lives, choices that we didn't make, paths that we chose not to walk down. We grieve the lives that never got to be lived in young students this week and young soldiers fighting for their country on this Memorial Day. The Bible reminds us that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for another. We grieve those opportunities to love that we didn't take advantage of. But it all comes down to love. Love is the energy that never moves, never changes, and can never be lost. Dr. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of our spiritual philosophy and way of life, wrote this. He was quoted as saying this in the Science of Mind magazine. He wrote, "Energy is eternal. The stuff out of which all forms are made is indestructible. In this vast change we live in, the flux and the flow, the ebb and the tide of evolution, there is a constancy, a consistence. There is in the midst of all movement something which does not move and yet moves all things." Something that does not move yet moves all things. What is that thing? It is that thing which we call God. It is that thing which we call Spirit. It is love that does not move and yet moves all things. It is the one constant, the substance back of all things, no matter what the physical world tells us. It's okay to grieve. It is necessary. It is important. It is important to honor the love that is behind that grief. And that love is a soothing balm. Just like a healing ointment can soothe a wound, love can be a soothing balm for sadness. Perhaps it is talking to a friend that will simply listen while we cry and muddle our way through it. Perhaps it is in a partner, spouse, or a loved one that will simply hold us and rub our back through our heartache and pain. Perhaps it is a solo walk on the beach while silently listening to the sounds of the water soothe our soul. Or a walk in the woods to allow the silence of nature and the caress of trees and nature to bring us back to our wholeness. Sinking into a favorite piece of music or literature that has notes or words that bring to life how we're feeling in a meaningful way. Perhaps it's immersing in an aromatic fragrance that heals and soothes the senses, or soaking in a hot tub at the end of the day. Or it could be a combination of any of these things. Applied with the focus of love, it brings peace to our soul. Whatever the application of love, allowing it to be that soothing balm for our internal grief and our sadness can bring us back to that place of oneness, that place of love. Another spiritual practice you might think of this week is the Buddhist practice of metta, M-E-T-T-A, or loving kindness meditation, or the Buddhist practice of Tonglen. One way to do this is to simply become still. We focus on the rise and fall of our breath, and we simply are still, and we feel that sadness, that grief, the suffering that you or the world might be feeling. We breathe in, we become still, and we breathe out love. Being present with the grief or suffering of ourselves, others, or the world. Simply breathing out love into every corner of the world. Everyone and anyone who is experiencing grief or suffering. We connect with every living being and join together in oneness. When we remember that sadness and grief is really about love, we remember that the only way to end darkness is to turn on a light, to be that place of love, to shine that love out into the world, to be that energy that never moves, but that moves all things, that rises the tide of human consciousness. And so I invite you this morning to just place your hand over your heart. As we become still, as we breathe in, we become aware of our own grief, past or present, the grief and suffering of a world. We breathe out love. Breathing in, we become still. Breathing out, we see the entire world surrounded by love. We take this opportunity to surround every single person who has been affected by violence in the past few weeks. We surround them in love. We think of all of the men and women who have served in our military and our armed forces, who have lost their lives. And we surround them in love. We think of all the families that have been affected by the loss of a loved one in the past years. And we surround them with love. We think of all the ways and all the things that we have lost that we loved, whatever that might look like. And we surround ourselves with love. For truly, love is that thing which does not move, but yet that which moves all things. And we just send out thoughts of loving kindness to the entire world. May we all be at peace. May we all, past and present and future, be free of suffering. May we be well. And may we live and move and have our being in, through, and as love. And so it is. And so I invite the practitioners and ministers that are with us here this morning to join me in the atmosphere of prayer this morning as we continue into that consciousness of oneness. That consciousness that says there is only one power, one presence, one principle. It is that thing which we call God, that thing which we call spirit, order, balance, peace, joy, harmony, and perfect right action. Whatever name we give it, I know that we are living, moving, and having our being as divine expressions of that one. It is the principle back of every appearance. It is the love back of every action. It is the light within each one of us. It is the light of love in the world. I know that I live and move and have my being in and through and as that one. I am a whole, divine, and perfect expression of the divine. And what I know is true about me, I know is true for each one of you, and with everybody within the sound of my voice. I know that life, that love, that God, that Spirit is living and having its beingness as you. I know that love is that divine energy back of everything in your life. That whatever is feeling like it's missing from this moment in your life, balance, joy, wholeness, peace, I know that it is present right here and right now, and I claim it for you. I claim it for myself. I claim it for this community, and I claim it for the world. I know that Spirit, that God is living, moving, and having its being in this moment, in this community, and in this world. I know that as we surrender to that love, that it fills our awareness, it fills our body, it fills our love, it fills our life. It guides and directs us into all the perfect decisions, all the perfect actions to choose love. And so in this moment, we choose love. And so in great gratitude, I give thanks for that love that can never be lost, that is always within, because it is who and what we are. And I release this word into the law, knowing that it is perfect and it is reflected back to me perfectly, just the way that it has been planted. And in great gratitude, I simply know and declare, and so it is. So I invite you to stand as we close out our service with the peace song this morning, and then we will close with our benediction.
There is peace on earth, and yes, it begins with me. Yes, there is peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our power, family all are we. We will walk with each other in perfect harmony. Yes, peace begins with me. Yes, this is the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Yes, there is peace, and yes, it begins with me.
So I invite you to place your hand over your heart and repeat after me. There is this thing called love. Love is in my mind. Love is in my body. Love is in all my affairs. I embrace it. I accept it. And I share it. No matter how it shows up. And love is life. And so it is.
Thank you for joining us for our Sunday service. Please remember to like, comment, and share this video on Facebook, YouTube, and any other social media you are a member of. To donate to CSL Beaumont, you can text GIVE to 951-420-6909, or you can visit our website at cslbeaumont.org and click the donate button at the top or bottom of the page. You can also mail your donation to CSL Beaumont, 802 Maple Avenue, Beaumont, California, 92223. Have a blessed day.